Welcome to July's ECR Wednesday webinar, hosted by eLife, a series that aims to give early career researchers a platform to discuss issues important to you and your research career. Today, our speakers will discuss the roles, challenges and opportunities for women in science. The webinar will begin with the panelists sharing their stories. Then, in the second half of the webinar, we'll be putting your questions to them. To ask a question, you can type in the question box on the GoToWebinar Functions panel, or you can tweet us, we are at eLife Community, using the ECR Wednesday hashtag. Please also join us on Twitter immediately after the webinar, where we'll continue discussion under the ECR Wednesday hashtag. Finally, I'd just like to let you know that we are recording the webinar and will make it available on YouTube in the near future. Now I'll pass it over to Melissa to introduce the panelists.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Emma, for the introduction and for introducing the webinar. I'm glad to invite you all to today's webinar, and we're discussing removing barriers for women in science. And I'm an early career postdoc based at the Kembury Wellcome Trust Research Program, and I'm interested in highlighting early career researchers of an African origin, and I'm the African representative on the Early Career Advisory Group. So on our panel today, we have Benjamin, who is based at the University of Science and Technology in Nkrumah, Ghana. We have Deena, who's based in Egypt, and we have Koi Murai, who's based in Nairobi at the Kembury Wellcome Trust Research Program, and we have Jess, who's based at Imperial College in London. So at the moment, we don't have Benjamin and Deena on the call, but we will start with Jess and then Koi to talk about briefly what they think are the barriers for women in science. So please join us. We will be taking questions throughout the webinar, and as well we'll be joined after in the Twitter session by Emmett Chapman, who will be joining the Twitter live discussion after the webinar. Thank you very much. So I'll take, so Jess, you can start today's discussion and just tell us a little bit about yourself, as well as what you think are the barriers for women in science.
Okay, thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you for arranging everything. And I look forward to meeting Benji and Deena when they join us later on. And I do hope everyone stays for the Twitter chat at 5 p.m. because Dr. Emmett Chapman, who will be joining, is a really, really great astrophysicist. And she does a lot of work to support people from sexual harassment and bullying in academia, which is very timely at the moment. And she's also really brilliant. And she also works at Imperial with me. So I work in the Department of Physics and Center for Plastic Electronics, and my job is to make circularly polarizing light-emitting diodes out of organic semiconductors. So these are carbon-based systems that have a really cool kind of bonding that lets them be able to semiconduct. So we can use them in devices like light-emitting diodes and solar panels. And I look at characterizing these organic structures. Alongside that, I'm incredibly passionate about equality and diversity and better representation of everyone in society in science departments and engineering departments, and just science and engineering in general. So I'm going to talk from a kind of UK perspective about things that we have that are going on in the UK at the moment. We have a lot of kind of senior, really big initiatives that start from the top of a university to try and better support the women who are in the university, whether that's returning from maternity leave, taking time out to do caring roles, support them in applying for promotions, protect them from perhaps negative comments they get on kind of student evaluations and surveys, and also to help them apply for grants and to get through peer review processes. And I think those kind of structures need to be in place for all underrepresented groups. They're really big challenges when you are an academic to keep you as an academic. The other big challenge I see happening is to get girls to make the right subject choices in the first place to allow them to choose science and engineering later on. So maybe when you're kind of 14 or 15 years old, you don't necessarily think you want to end up as a scientist or an engineer. But if you don't choose to study maths and physics and chemistry, you've completely kind of closed those doors. You've made it so that you can't ever go into that kind of area. And I think that's really restrictive, because I was a completely different person when I was 14 or 15 to who I am today. But luckily, I chose these subjects that let me now decide whatever I want to do. So I work a lot with the Institute of Physics in the UK, and if anyone doesn't know who they are, you should check them out. They have a phenomenally great resource bank of things for teachers who are interested in teaching all different kinds of physics and a bit of chemistry and a bit of biology. But then also they have a great program which is called Improving Gender Balance, and this is trying to increase the number of girls studying physics at a kind of advanced level in high schools in the UK primarily, because that's where their funding is. But they'd be really happy to help anyone all over the world. And so I've worked a lot with them, or as much as I can. They're all really brilliant, and I kind of come in at the end and I'm like, hey, you guys are so great. But I think what they do is really great because it's evidence-based. So they've gone to these schools, they've looked at what the problem is, and they've come at it and said, you know, this is what we can do to solve it. And it's exactly like these kind of interventions we're making at a more senior level in universities, where we've said, this is the problem. Women are struggling at these points in their career, whether it's the kind of promotion step, whether it's the maternity leave step. And we've looked at really, really scientifically designed solutions to solve it. And this is something that really excites me. It's not just like, oh, here's the problem, we know what to do. It's let's do a bit of research first. Let's find where these challenges are. And then afterwards, we'll go back and make the solutions. So I'm really inspired by these kind of activities. Last year, and I'll stop talking in a minute because we have such great people coming up, but actually maybe we're going to have to do it all on our own. But last year I took part in an incredible program with the US State Department called Hidden No More, and it was an international visitor leadership program that brought together 48 women from 48 different countries all over the world. And we went around America looking at initiatives to support and recruit and retain women in science. And kind of what I learned in a nutshell is every country in the world is very similar, right? We're all struggling with this, and we're all struggling with it for a whole bunch of different reasons. But most of it comes down to these kind of stereotypes and biases that pervade through all of our societies. And what was incredibly important to every one of these inspirational 48 women that I met was that they had a really, really good mentor and a really, really good advocate. They had really great advice early on in their career about where to apply next, when to say no to things, when to say yes to things, what kind of things they should be putting in their thesis, in their resume, they call them in America. And then they had someone, a little advocate, who went out and nominated them for prizes, who put them forward for talks, who invited them to different universities. And these kind of things were incredibly important for these very successful women in science to be able to succeed. And I mean, I can't even tell you how inspirational these different women on the trip were, but they definitely made me realize that we need to be doing more of that. We as researchers need to be mentoring the people who are a bit younger than us, and we need to be getting mentored by people who are a bit older. And I think finding the right mentor is a really difficult thing. It probably shouldn't be someone in your department. It should definitely not be someone who's quite keen on you staying at the same stage so you can support them in your science. But you do need to find that person, and it's something that I'm hoping to do over the next year. So I think that's probably enough from me, but I really look forward to the discussion later on. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Jess. So I've switched off my webcam just so I can maximize on the bandwidth. So I'll take it, Koi, could you just briefly tell us what you do, and then what are you doing to address barriers for women in science in your space?
Okay, thanks, Melissa. I'm really pleased to be part of this panel today, and thank you for inviting me to be one of the panelists. So, as you alluded to earlier, I'm a postdoctoral social scientist working at the KEMRI Wellcome Trust Research Program in Nairobi, Kenya. I have a particular interest in issues around gender and health. I'd say that's the overall lens that I use to look at various topics, whether that be child health and child nutrition, or work around health leadership and governance. So generally a broad interest in gender and health, and specifically also in the social sciences and qualitative research. Just by the way, I did do engineering at university for a couple of years, but then I switched to the humanities. So, you know, but I appreciate everything you're saying. But for me, it was a personal choice, not necessarily a gender thing. But Mel, perhaps before, if it's okay, before I answer your question about what well, I guess it's related, what I'm personally doing to help address issues, you know, the challenges that women face in science. I just want to pick up on what Jess was talking about around mentorship, because if I reflect on my own experience, if I speak briefly about my own experience, I really cannot underscore the importance of, like, I cannot underscore enough the importance of mentorship, the role that good mentorship has played in my own career path. But then again, as you were saying, Jess, it's not just about mentorship, but I'm not sure whether to call them advocates as you have, or for me it was just, you know, that person who's cheering you on, who's letting you know, you can do this, who's, as you're saying, putting your name forward for talks and conferences, and I really think that plays a key role. And in a sense, maybe that is also related to, I'll speak of my own context, the way maybe we are nurtured, or I'm not sure that to call it nurture or culture. So I come from a context where, sometimes, whether in a subtle way or in an overt way, females or women and girls are, told you should not be maybe too opinionated, or you should be a bit more passive, and you should be a bit more submissive. So to then have that person who says to you, wait, hang on, it's okay to put yourself out there, and it doesn't mean you're not being, you don't have sufficient humility or whatever, you are good at what you do, and you should you should take on opportunities, you should go and speak at these conferences, you should apply for these funding proposals. So just having that voice that kind of affirms you, if you like, for me, has played a very important role. And I've had that kind of support, fortunately, both professionally and personally. Incidentally, for me, it's actually been mostly by male figures. I've also had female mentors who've played a key role, very huge role in my career progression and in my academic success. But then equally, I've had a lot of key men in my life, who professionally and personally, who really kind of helped to raise me up by just being great mentors, but then also reminding me that you're great, you can do anything that anyone else can do, you can do, you're brilliant. Just that affirmation has been a really positive thing for me. And so in my own way, what I really take the mentorship role very seriously. So in my own little way, I believe in leading from my own corner of the world. And what I'm trying to do right now is really trying to mentor younger women in a very informal way at the moment. But I would want to see a time in my particular institution where we really do formalize that. And Mel and I have talked at length around this. Just have a much more formal way of mentoring the younger women who are coming through the institution, but also for us, because we're not at the top of our game yet. So as Jess was saying, we also need to be mentored by those who are ahead of us, if you like. But then another thing, Mel, that I'd really like to introduce to this discussion, which I think is important for us to introduce in this discussion, and maybe I'll just briefly introduce it, and if we have time during the Q&A with the audience, I'd want us to explore it some more, is my own personal opinion is I feel we need to move beyond parity. So parity is very much about gender, as I understand it, parity is very much around gender balance and gender equality, which is great. And I'm all for that. I'm a strong advocate for, having the numbers and, having 50-50, if you like, ratio. But then, and Miranda, if you're there, maybe this would be a good time to put up the figure I'd sent to you earlier on, the graphic I'd sent to you earlier on. But for me, I think parity in and of itself cannot be the end goal. We need to take the conversation towards equity. And I just have a small illustration there, just a figure that I just got off the web to kind of try and differentiate between equality and equity. So for instance, we're talking about gender parity and challenges and barriers to getting women into science. But say, for example, we even managed to get 50-50, so the ratio of 50-50 men and women in science. But then if we closely scrutinize the 50% of the women that we have in science, we find that, for example, maybe because of the nature of the jobs or the demands of the jobs, we've only managed to attract, for example, maybe much younger women who don't have childcare or family responsibilities, or who are not caring for aged parents. But we've completely, in the process, excluded, whether consciously or unconsciously, women who are juggling many other responsibilities. Then have we really achieved the goal? Or the reverse is also true. If, for instance, the science leadership space is only occupied by, much more senior women, maybe more elder women, much more senior, much more accomplished, who already have some form of privilege because they're well known and so on and so forth, but there's no space for the younger emerging, female scientist leaders, then have we achieved the goal? So what I'm trying to allude to is that it's not, I personally feel it's not just enough for us to talk about parity. We need to start having a conversation beyond parity. We need to recognize that women are not a homogeneous group, that, gender does not operate in isolation. It does not operate in a vacuum. Gender intersects with very many other social factors or social axes to create unique experiences for people, whether those are experiences of privilege or disadvantage. And so when we talk about issues around gender parity, gender equality, gender balance, we need to do that through an intersectional lens that allow us to kind of really investigate these issues in a more nuanced way. But maybe I'll just leave it at that. And if we have time later on in the conversation, I'd be happy to pick that up.
Okay, well, I'll just try and see if Benji is with us online. Benji, are you there with us online? Okay, we'll wait a little bit for Benji to join us and Deena as well. So something that I think that's coming through from both of you, Jess and Koi, and I'd like to take back to this issue of, are there any female leaders or female mentors who are really playing a key role in allowing their fellow either females also progressing through the pipeline? Do we have enough examples of that?
So something that kind of strikes me, and something that I've been doing a lot of at the moment, and something that I got a Guardian article yesterday, is that we have.
Yes, I saw that.
It was great. So we have incredibly bad representation on sites like Wikipedia. So the majority of young people now, if they want to find out about a particular discipline, or even me, if I want to find out about a particular research technique or a new company, we Google them, right? We all type them into the internet and we look them up. And the first thing that comes up on Google, because it's indexed so frequently, is Wikipedia. And so it kind of gives someone validity. If they have a Wikipedia page, you think, oh, that person is a real scientist, or that person is a real engineer, and it's someone who is kind of notable enough. But if you look at the biographies on English-speaking Wikipedia, only 17% of those biographies are about women. So kind of 83% of the time you're going to come across a man. And obviously, as women are already underrepresented in science, and going back to kind of what Koi said before, this isn't just women, it's kind of people, ethnic minorities, it's LGBTQ plus people, it's all people who have this kind of intersectionality, increasingly specialized. Oh, someone's here. Is that Deena or Benji?
Yes, I think it's, yes. Deena has joined us as well.
Hello.
Great, Deena, great to have you. Do you want to switch on your video for a little bit? And if you need to switch it off, then we can.
I don't know how. I'm trying to switch for the video and don't know how to switch for it.
So there's
I'm speaking from the mobile.
There's okay. So I think it might be a challenge
from the iPhone. Yeah. Okay. Is it? I have to switch to the computer or what?
Ideally,
Mel, can I suggest? Because we've had difficulties getting Deena on, that maybe we
let's stick to the mobile. Yeah, let's just stick to the mobile.
I was just listening to you while I was talking, and I listened to a little from what Jessica said before. I was just communicating with you and just listening. I didn't make it to just join using the video call. Sorry for that.
Jess, can I ask that you hold your thought, because that's very interesting what you were talking about. And then I'll ask Deena to just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself and what you think the main barriers for women in science are.
Okay, first of all, hello to you all, and thank you for just letting me join this webinar. I'm Deena from Egypt. I work as a researcher in the botany department at the Faculty of Science. My main duties is to join the plant ecology team at the department. I'm a plant ecologist. My main major is medicinal plants. So I also do some research on medicinal plants, and I do teach plant ecology and biodiversity for students. I have little microbiology skills also, and somehow I join microbiology proposals and projects. I act as an editor for the Katrina Journal, which is a journal for publishing articles in our department or in our in Egypt, in the whole of Egypt, and sometimes international research too. From my point of view, the challenge that face women in science in Egypt, or let me say not Egypt, for the Middle East, is that they consider it better for the ladies to be in the kitchen nor to be in the lab. So after all your work and what you did, and you have a long CV, and you have publications, and you have many things and proposals and projects, the only question regarding you is, oh, are you married? Oh, you're not married, so you have no achievement at all. So why? I do have publications, I do have projects. No, you don't have kids. So they are suppressing all the ladies. Even my students are trying to monitor, as you said, in an informal way, to say to them, please, please, ladies, just focus on your future, focus on your education. You have to be educated in order, even if you listen to your family's point of views or this from the society ideas that you have to marry first. You have to be educated in order to raise a good children or to be a good mother. The other thing in Egypt, it's not only for ladies, but for the whole research environment. It is a suppressing environment. We have little fund. We have no resources for scientific research. As we have no infrastructure, we have no facilities. So to be a research in a developing country or something like that, it's a challenge itself regarding you are a man or a lady. So to be a lady and in this environment, you have two extra challenge. You have to fight for funding. You have to fight to have your position. I think according to a study, 60% of the junior members are females, but 20%, only 20% are full professors. Why? Because promotion needs research, needs funding, needs projects, and needs to publish articles, which is not so easy. When we just admit for funding, the team with the men or the one who are most famous get the grant. Even if you are more successful, if you are just more educated, you are just a woman and you cannot lead the team. Not in everything, but I think this is a very big issue here. You have, including in your team, a man who can manage the things, even the financial things, the administration, the documents, have relations, something like that. The other thing is that I said before, the society suppressing most of ladies. That even a small girl, I am asking her upon graduation, what are you going to do? She told me that I'm just engaged and I'm just thinking about the marriage. Okay, and what about your future? What are you going to do? No, I just being married and my husband will he just spend and he has the role to spend on us and I'll be a mother and have a kid and blah blah blah. When you just found that this is the junior thinking, you be just wow. So why do I do this to my life? No, girls, you have to just break the rules, not the rules. You have to break taboos. Some taboos have to be broken in order to just face this, and you have to apply for scholarships. You have to complete your education. You have to be more to learn more. Here we have that most of the students can speak English good or well in a better way. I encouraged all of them to take the test of the IELTS or the TOEFL and improve their language. I encourage them to read more, to apply. Even if you didn't get the grant or even you didn't get it, you have to apply. You have to have the courage to do so. I don't want to just talk more than my time, and maybe in the discussion we can continue later. Thank you.
Okay, great. I think I mean, all of you are raising really key and interesting points here, and they're cross-cutting regardless of what environment one is coming from. I just want to check, is Benji online? I think we still don't have Benji. Oh,
yeah,
brilliant,
I'm listening
Benji.
to,
Yeah,
okay.
I can hear him.
Okay, brilliant, Benji. So maybe good point for you to come in. Just introduce yourself briefly and then tell us what you think the main barriers are and challenges for women in science.
Okay, thank you very much. And first, my apologies for the hitches. I'm happy to join the team and also listen a little to what has been said earlier by Jessica and Chris. And I look at these issues of having breaking the barriers to women in science from a very practical point when I manage the climate impact research capacity and leadership enhancement programs. First, it starts from the basis of there's already an existing gap and having to put in interventions to make sure that gap is bridged. In the Circle program, for example, the focus was to get a 50-50 ratio for male and female fellowship awardees. But before we started that, we had put in place an expression of interest for anybody at all without any eligibility criteria being applied to just show interest you would like to be part of this program. And what we got was a 70-30 ratio in favor of the males, which is quite similar to the general trend in research, women in research. So right from the beginning, the challenge was very clear to us as to what we are faced with. But when we now started implementing the project, even more practical challenges came in. One of them has to do with issues of, for instance, mobility. This is a program where we were looking at giving funding to early career researchers to move from their institutions in Africa to another institution to undertake their one-year fellowship. But it wasn't that easy for the fellows to move from where they are because there are issues of family. And so I'm now taking to the female fellows. There were issues of family that they had to be interested and caring about, how their children were going to be catered for by the time that they were away. There were also issues of you have taken some time off academia, either for maternity, other many maternity issues, and you just returned, and now you have a fellowship, you want to step out of the institution again. So you come back, you are very low on the pecking order. And these are things that are very dear to the research because by the time they come back, the males that they started with had already gone ahead, and that is for the maternity, and now they are going out for fellowship, and they are wondering, by the time we come back, are we going to still have the situation actually being deepened, getting worse, and also getting released by the institutions to take up such opportunities because some institutions will give that we have given you already some chance to be away from the system for childbirth. Now you are back, you want to step out again. So these were issues that were really close to the heart of the female applicants that we had. But for a program like that has its clear objectives, we now have to see for how we're going to intervene to make sure the female fellows get the award to undertake their research, and their institutions are also in tune with what we are doing. So one of the things we did initially, first was an extensive engagement with the institutional leaders on the need for support for these early career female researchers in science and the eventual benefits that will accrue to the institution should they allow these ladies to take up the opportunities. We also have to design training programs for the potential female applicants because we are looking at a situation that 70-30, there was already a barrier, a big gap there. How to bridge that gap, to put in place programs, to give proposal development programs, research skills that will help them before they even apply for the program, in a bid to make sure, one, you are getting the numbers that you want, but you are also not compromising on any form of, let's say somebody says, okay, you have given this opportunity to this group of people because you wanted just the numbers, but you wanted to make sure they are going to go through the same rigorous peer review process when they submit their proposals. So let the proposals be solid and let them compete on the level playing field like any other applicants that were coming in. Then the third one was infusing the fellowship with career development training teams. So by the time they go back, they have been exposed to more things than just coming to undertake their research, and they wouldn't feel that they are inadequate in any way when they return to their institutions. And a key aspect was the flexibility with which the program was to be managed. This is a peculiar context. It cannot be applied across board like any other program that is being implemented anywhere. So we have to become quite flexible in allowing the female fellows in particular to return to their home countries in the course of the fellowship for data collection. Because staying one whole year away for some of them was going to be a big hindrance. So return to the institutions, return to their families, do the data collection for a period of 2 months to 3 months, and then return to the host institution. And in the end, we really got good output coming from the applicants that we had, especially the female research fellows. Some of the successes that, in my opinion, we got from that fellowship was that many challenges for early career research women in Africa were identified. Most of the things that we used to talk about, these are possible issues. We really got concrete and practical issues of what the challenges they face in their career progression, and also to become the top-notch researchers that we believe they can be. And also, we managed to get many senior researchers in our institutions based in Africa to appreciate the unique context within which the early career women scientists work, and how to give them the necessary support to push whatever they were doing. And for DFID, who was funding the program, DFID isn't based, it's a UK program, all right? We wanted to make sure they really got the context within which their support was being made. So for us, we believe DFID also gained a good insight into the context such programs operate, which I hope will influence other future interventions in order to get the best out of the support they give, both for the individual researcher, for the institutions that they are working in, as well for the DFID itself, which continues to give such interventions to researchers on the continent. And at the end of this current first phase of the fellowship, what we are seeking was to get a 50-50 ratio, 50 male, 50 female. But by the time the program ended, we had a 51-49% ratio in favor of the women. And in terms of those that were successful in their application, got the funding, and were able to implement their good work. So challenges are there, and it requires conscious effort to really address them. When you just put general interventions for every researcher on board, it doesn't work. We need to really identify the unique context within which different groups of people are working and have tailor-made interventions for those groups in order to achieve the successes that they deserve to achieve, but for which reason the few challenges are hindering them from getting that space. And that is one for the circle program. I hope to catch up more with the questions based on other things that were done at the AES level and also at the Scientific African Journal and what we are doing now. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant, Benji. And I think you summed it now quite nicely to the next question I was going to ask all the panelists. We do have a question from the audience, and it's to do with how do you motivate the female folk to sort of aspire to higher levels? And then that ties in, do we have enough role models? Do we have enough female science leaders that are sort of shining the light for the younger female early career research to sort of follow through? And I'd like each one of you to just say a few words to that in a couple of sentences.
Jess, you'd already started. Do you want to go for it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Go on, Jess.
Okay, so I think that this comes actually nicely back to the Wikipedia. I think everywhere is full of role models, right? When we look around, there are so many brilliant scientists, whether they're in the UK or in Africa or in America or in Spain. There are so many amazing ones. And we don't do well enough as a profession in celebrating the people we have. We're very quick to say, oh, we don't have enough of this, we don't have enough of that. But we should look kind of now and throughout our history and find these people and start telling their stories, because if we don't, no one will. And then in 10, in 15, in 20 years, they'll be completely forgotten. And we need to recognize their contributions to science, recognize their contributions to making science a better place, and then also start shouting about it. We need to create them pages on Wikipedia. We need to put them forward to do TED Talks. We really, really need to diversify the image of what it is like to do it, be a scientist, but we need to do that in the kind of platforms that people consume news. So we don't need to start creating a million blogs or a million new kind of apps or anything like that. We need to be telling these stories in the way that people already access facts, which is why things like TED Talks, things like Wikipedia can be so powerful, because people go there for information anyway. People trust these sources. They look at them and they think, that's someone who is genuine, authentic, and actually contributing to our understanding of the world. So I think we can definitely do it. There are 100% enough role models, but we just need to get better at telling their stories.
Koi, did you have anything to tie into this?
I think I do agree with what Jessica is saying, and I mean, I personally am from the social sciences, so of course, there's many more women in that field. So I do feel that yes, we do have role models, but perhaps as Jess is saying, is we don't tell their story enough, or maybe even they don't come out and talk about it enough, or yeah. So I think it's more about putting more female. The role models are there, but yeah, putting ourselves out there some more and nowadays with technology and everything, there's very many creative ways we can go about doing that. So yeah, so I think
I think just what you were saying, Koi, it's very similar to what Benji said. Like, there are these people who might not want to come forward and talk. They might not be the ones who like getting on stage. They might be a bit introverted. And for them, certainly for the kind of going out, giving talks, getting promoted, having these opportunities, it just needs to be a bit of support early on. It needs to be someone senior, someone like Koi, someone like Benji, someone like Deena, who says, hey, you're really brilliant and you can do this and you can contribute hugely. And it just needs that little, kind of like we were talking before with kind of advocates and sponsors.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think also we as early career researchers also do have a role, like, what are we also doing? So we are role models in a sense. We might not be the highest role models, but we are role models in our own right. But, so what are we also doing? Like, we also need to put ourselves out there. And as you're saying, I think also the image sometimes people have of scientists is that maybe they're dull and boring, or they're much older, or this or the other. So I think also it's true. I mean, we do have a schools engagement program in the institution where I work, Emory Wellcome Trust, run by one of our colleagues. And when they have talked to the students, like they bring students to come and visit our institutions, and then after, ask them some questions. And one of the things I find really interesting is that they always say that they now have a very different perception of what a scientist looks like, because in their mind they had an image of this older person, white gray hair, and then they come into our labs and they're all these like young hip people who just look like normal human beings enjoying their work. So I think there is also value in kind of trying to change that image, if you like.
Yes,
great. Okay, yes, Benji.
Yes, when it comes to role models, I think it's been said, I totally agree. We have enough role models. When it comes to whether we have enough visible role models, then that is where the issue comes. The visibility, as has been said, we need to really put these role models out, tell their stories for the younger ones coming up to really see that, yes, it is possible. These came from the same backgrounds as we are coming from, and they have been successful in what we are doing. So the visibility of our role models. And the issue of role models also ties very closely with that of mentorship. There is a need for real mentoring, having people that are genuinely interested in the work of the early career researchers and ready to hold their hand, ready to assist them in what they are doing. That is very critical. We can have the role models, but role models may not necessarily be mentors. So we need to have visible role models, but we also need to have mentors within the institution that the early career researchers are working. These are the ones that will help them. The mentoring by senior colleagues in particular, or even peer mentoring. Those who are going to hold your hand, those who are going to cover you up, those who are going to help to maneuver the troubled territory, those who are going to calm people down and show them the door to opportunities, knowing that there is someone there who really cares for what you are doing. It's already a very big step that you are bold to step up and take advantage of what is available to you. So the role models are great. we also need real mentors within the institution to really assist the early career researcher, especially the women researchers, to really push through what they are doing.
Okay. Deena, do you want to offer an opinion on this?
Okay, I do agree with all of you for that the role models are already here, and we all know about many of our role models or other role models in other countries or other disciplines. But the thing that I myself try to do with the students, or I deal with students all the time, to discover or to just tell them that these are all normal people and you can be like them, X or Y, or who they are. You can achieve it by working, by learning, by developing yourself. I think this is the importance of the presence of the role model in our life, to introduce it to the other people, not only students, to other people. I myself was having a radio program. It was a very short program, about 10 minutes a week. I was introducing to the students. I just was broadcasting it in the Facebook with my friends. Just every week we have a subject about how to do a new thing in your life. Our next series was about role models, whom we are going to introduce to the people, the normal people. They have to know that normal people can be scientists, can have Nobel Prizes, can be engineers, can be astronauts. All this can just in simple way, we can show them the role models and their importance, and that you could be a role model. It's just a seed inside you. You have to plant it and just water it in order to be a big tree of whatever you want. I think it's all about this. Thank you.
Okay. Great. So I have one really interesting question from Samakech, who asks, how do we avoid the tragedy of success for the successful, where only a few women who may have good initial support and success thrive while the majority are forgotten? And these few may then obscure the forgotten majority. And I think that's really key. We might have all the shining bright stars, but how do we ensure that we have not just one, the big star in the sky, but even the small little stars are shining? You cannot pitch in here.
Yes, we had this kind of issue on our hands when we started the Circle program, because we did notice that, for instance, on the African continent, when you make such calls, there are certain institutions that always seize the opportunities. You talk at a few universities that are always up. They have the right systems in place. They have good packages for researchers. They are able to attract the best, and for which reason they are always the ones that get these opportunities. We sat down to really plan that, yes, this group will surely come in, but are there other groups that we must make sure we get them into the fold and help them to pair with these other institutions and build their capacity, that the next time they will be in a position to compete at the same level as the other top universities on the continent, for example. And I think that kind of approach should be taken into when we want to develop the capacity of early career women scientists. Let's really have targeted programs. The ones that everybody will come in to compete for will still continue to run, but we should really have ones that we target and look for people that have all the skills, have the expertise, but by virtue of probably geographical location, such opportunities don't get to them, or by virtue of the fact that they find themselves in a particular institution where they have limitations in resources, they are unable to really come up to the stage to compete favorably with the other ones who are already well-resourced. So such targeted approach will be able to bring those other ones to the same level as we want everybody to be.
Mel, I was just going to add to that as well, and thanks, Sam, for the question. Sam is actually my colleague, so I'm really glad he's attending. But I think this ties in very well with what I was trying to bring in earlier around intersectionality, right? So gender also intersects with, for instance, socioeconomic status, level of education, geographical location, all of that sort of stuff. And I think we need to be cognizant of this when we talk about issues around gender balance. And I really agree with what Benjamin is saying. One, it's around maybe, ensuring if we have this awareness, then we'll ensure we have perhaps more targeted programs rather than a one-size-fits-all approach. But then it's also just about removing some barriers. So for instance, I'm currently supporting an intern, and we've been trying to, so her internship is about to run out, and we've been trying to identify master's opportunities for her. And I was really surprised that some master scholarships out there from very well-known and reputable organizations expect applicants to pay certain fees, for example, to have their documents checked or their documents verified, or and I mean, if you're already coming from a particular context and, you know, you're not particularly, you know, you're strained for financial resources, already that excludes you from that process of even being able to obtain a scholarship to go pursue a master's degree or whatever. So it's also just about people like funders being aware that these things that might not seem so important really do lock out some very brilliant minds, but who might not afford the $120, which might not seem much for someone else, but from someone from a lower income context who's already struggling to make ends meet, just asking them for that amount of money to verify their documents or whatever, you know, is really a lot to ask for, and it locks out very many brilliant minds in the process. So yeah.
Jess?
I really think that I agree with what everyone said. In short, I think we need to take away these stupid barriers, whether it's funding on an application, whether it's that you're entirely judged on grades you get in an exam, that some people might be really, really good at taking exams, some people might not be really, really good at taking exams. And we need to get to a situation in this society where we evaluate people and their appropriateness for a role based on their kind of passion and drive and potential capabilities in this role, right? We need to have, where possible, we need to make sure that roles have interviews. So we need to ensure that for a PhD role, someone is coming to and being interviewed, not entirely judged on their transcript, because that's often the result of quite a complicated undergraduate degree. I think I'm just very concerned at the moment that we're judging people entirely on kind of their last score. So it's their last, you know, exam grades, their last this, their last that. And we need to be judging the whole scientist. And what we've kind of said, this idea that you're protecting the top, that you have these, I don't know if anyone saw the Nature article recently, but scientists have these kind of hot streaks where you suddenly start publishing, it will snowball, you'll publish more and more, and you'll have this crazy productive about 5 years. And this is selective for people who are, oh, someone's Googling.
Hi, Deena. I see Deena.
Hello.
So these kind of hot streaks are selective for people who've already been privileged. And I guess that for a long, long time, this has been kind of white, old, grey-haired men, because that's what the stereotypical vision of a scientist is. But we have to be really, really careful that this doesn't happen now with kind of more promoted white women, that we actually make sure that every single person has access to these grants. There was an incredibly interesting study recently, I don't know if anyone saw it, but it was on grant allocation and the best way to do it. And they found that you still get incredibly successful results from the outcomes of research grants if you allocate them randomly than if you do it with this kind of comprehensive and systematically quite biased peer review. So I just think it's a time when we really need to look at these old structures, whether it's publications, whether it's peer-reviewed grant panels, and we really need to start thinking, are these the best way to judge scientists of a new generation?
Great. I just feel like the webinar is just starting. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. So I'll ask each one of you to just summarize in 1 minute what you think the way forward is and what we really need to be doing to ensure that it's just not about parity, it's not equality, it's about equity and ensuring that we're bringing everybody forward at the same level. And don't forget that we have Twitter live discussion afterwards where a lot of the questions that have been asked during the webinar but have not been able to be answered will be followed up on. So can I start with you, Deena? Just have a minute to say what your punchline is following up from this discussion.
I think we can summarize what we said before or during the discussion, in that we had to rechange or just rephrase what the young students or the young researchers have to think about science. Science is not only about that impact factors publication, it's not only about the titles, it's not only about the role models, We have to ensure them that you have to work in order to achieve what you want in everywhere and everywhere and in many ways that could be more easy. As they all said, or as you said, that sometimes funders are seeking brilliant minds, but those brilliant minds don't have fund enough to just apply or to admit for a specific scholarship or fellowship or a program. So we have to teach them that, or to inform them that they have to just more facilities for young people and facilities for young researchers to overcome the barriers between science or across the universe in order to be more educated and to learn more. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Benji, can I have one last word from you?
Yes, thank you very much. And I think it will be good for me at this time to speak probably to the men who are on this panel and who can carry it across to the men who are out there. That as a person, I have sat in classroom with women. I have been taught by women. I've been supervised by and worked with women. And I can attest to the brilliance and the excellence with which I benefited from my relationship with them. And I know I'm not alone. There are many men that can attest to this. So we need to recognize our female colleagues we work with as equals, because that is exactly who they are. They are equals, and we must take this a step further by ensuring the environments in which we work are excellent and conducive for the growth and development of women in science. The science or research we do, how we relate, what we say, the structures we put in place, the hand we lend, the opportunities we create, the barriers we break, the policies and strategies that are developed should all be gender sensitive and aimed at helping build a better society. We can never have a better society when a major section of that society is left behind in any aspect. Today we are talking about women in science, but it applies to every aspect of our life. If we are talking about women in science now, we must make sure nobody is left behind, just as we want it to be applied everywhere. That's my message to myself and also to my colleague, the males.
Brilliant. We'll be following up on that, the male role in the discussion afterwards. Koi.
I think I'll peg my parting shot to what Deena talked about when she first spoke. I think she gave some really good examples of, for instance, the role of culture and context and so on, and just to kind of my call for going beyond parity. I think one of the potential dangers of focusing so much on gender parity or just gender balance is that it sometimes can become a tick box exercise, and then in turn we don't really challenge the underlying power structures or harmful gender norms that result in this inequality in the first place. So for instance, like what Deena was talking about. So just to encourage us that it's probably more messy and more complex to try and achieve gender equity than to achieve gender parity. I think there's very many interventions we can put in place, to just increase numbers and make sure we have equal ratios, and that's great and that's very important. But maybe we need to be bold enough to now start having a conversation that really challenges the power structures and the fundamental issues that that bring about this inequality in the first place. That it should not be okay that a woman is judged as kind of being less regardless of all her other accomplishments because she's not married or she doesn't have children. It's as though you are brought into this world simply for the purposes of producing and getting married. I think we really need to start having those hard conversations. They're uncomfortable conversations to have, but I think if we want to make any meaningful change, there are important conversations for us to start having. And I think this webinar is a great start. So yay to eLife.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I mean, it's been fantastic. I think we've barely scratched the surface, and I'll just bring my face up in the now that we're towards the end. I think we've barely scratched the surface on what the real issues are. And everybody in the audience, please join us up in the live Twitter discussion, because there's a lot more that we can be doing to try and remove barriers for women in science, and ensuring that the males are also in line with trying to ensure that they are bringing females up in the same way that they would with their own gender folks. So join us on Twitter. The hashtag is ECR Wednesday. please join us. Emma Chapman will also be joining us, and we'll be talking about the issues that women are facing in science as well. So welcome everybody to the Twitter discussion. Thank you very much, Koi, Jess, Deena, and Benji for joining us today. Thank you very much for being such great panelists. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.